A few years back, you could have felt the aura of excitement surrounding Cyberpunk 2077. Nothing could have held this game back from being one of the most explosive releases ever. I personally remember pre-ordering the game during around E3 2019 and waiting patiently before I could even begin to play it. Delay after delay, the hype kept building and building upon itself like a house of cards. And then it finally launched.
It's rain wet streets, it's nights like this with fog rolling in, cars and faceless people going by doing the things that they're doing. There's something kind of hypnotic about it. That's when I get inspired to carry what these streets are like, what the city is like, the mysteries, the stories, the thousands and thousands of people that you pass that are going by as shadows in this wet, cold, dangerous environment. I wanted to grab that. I wanted to take it into the future, and where I took it was Cyberpunk.
Cyberpunk is just a really tough game to talk about. Not because it's an incredibly dense one, but for me, more so that it's a myriad of a really brilliant game, contrasted with unfortunately a really flawed one. On the one hand, it's one of the most beautifully crafted worlds I've ever seen. I instantly fell in love with it the second I laid my eyes on it. Then you have the absolute state of the game at launch, the continued problems affecting it to this day. Odd design aspects sprinkled throughout, just the overall feeling of being incomplete, and the real kicker to me, the broken promises. If you've played this game before, and especially at launch, you know what I'm talking about. It's not easy trying to say something about this game without having the urge to explain the 20 other things that influence it and cause it to become something worse than it should be. Or how I feel like I should preface everything with my feelings about it before I talk about anything to make you understand that I'm not coming from some weird place of hatred. So yeah, let me preface everything. I love this game. I don't have some weird hate boner because of its launch date or whatever problem I can really blow it out of proportion. What this game does right, it takes in strides, but what it falters on brings just the overall experience down. I really want to call this game a masterpiece, my dream game, but it just isn't. I know it might seem like it, considering everything I just said, but I don't like talking negatively about games I enjoy, even though that is what I've been doing so far. I want to sing praises left, right, and center, but I know I just can't. It's never been right to me to just ignore problems when they hold down an otherwise fantastic game. Okay, now that I've spilled my guts out trying to explain why I will love this game and hate it at the same time, I will be spoiling a massive amount of the game, from the beginning to the multiple endings and everything else in between. So as always, if you haven't played Cyberpunk yet, then I really do implore you to play it for yourself. It has problems. Holy fuck, it has problems. But if you enjoy games as I do, it is a really wonderful and immersive story-based experience. I will try my best to not spoil major plot elements, but minor character spoilers and so forth will be occurring. I really don't want to push this game on you. I would honestly love you to formulate your own opinions on this, just from my own experiences, but I'd rather you just enjoy the game freely from spoilers rather than listen to me ruin some aspects. So if you want to, please go play the game if you haven't. It's not nearly as buggy as it was at launch, and for me, it was in a state where it was very much so playable. You guys gonna are you gonna leave? I could be here all day, man. Like I don't go outside. Like I don't like you guys. I don't think you guys realize. I'm trying to fuck. Shit. I just don't go outside that much, to be honest. Like, you know, I'm like, fuck, I forgot to take my headphone. Fuck, how do people do this shit? I have to move the fucking fuck. Are they gone yet? I don't want to do this anymore. I'm trying not to be a fucking, a comment fucking creator, content fucking dude. Dude, fucking, sheesh. Oh, those views, man. I gotta get out those shit, man. You know what I'm talking about? Are they gone yet? Can I actually do the video now? Can I just do the video? I don't want to do this anymore. I took my whole mic off my fucking stand and I don't know how I'm going to put this back on. and I'm kind of mad that I did this as a joke, and it's not even that funny. And now, I don't even know if this is gonna be in the video. If this is gonna be in the video, I'm really low on funny shit right now. That's all I'm gonna say. Shit, you know what I mean? Fucking, it's a low season, man. It's a low season. I don't got a lot of yield. So yeah. Yeah, I'm just gonna end this. Cool. Still here, well, don't come complain to me after this. But seriously, let's finally delve into this fucking behemoth of a game.
'Cause we lost everything. We had to pay the price. That one thing that changed it all. That one thing that caused the fall. A thing of beauty, I know, will never fade away. What you did to me, I know, will never fade away. And under my duty, will never fade away.
Cyberpunk's story is one of the few things that many people can agree is the best part of the entire package. Besides the flaws, the story is what makes the game worth playing. And yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that idea. The story is what got me hooked into the world of Cyberpunk and kept me going to finish it and continue to talk about it over the last 2 years or so. The narrative of Cyberpunk for me is not an easy thing to explain. The many different characters and storylines that intertwine with each other throughout the entire game offer a pretty compelling and good story. Many of the actions you can take can sort of feel like they matter, and while for the majority of the time they have no impact, it's that feeling that matters most to me when talking about a game like this. It does stride and immerse in you as your character. You are V. Your V is who you want them to be. Either an extension of yourself or someone unique from yourself. No matter what, that ability within the story to make you feel like you are in control is more difficult to achieve, but the game does do a rather real job of it. As you can probably tell by now, what I'm trying to put an emphasis on is the feeling. Stories, in my humble opinion, are not much else besides feelings. A story could have all the aspects of a good story, but what if it doesn't make you feel? Then it's nothing. You could list the number of different stories that have good beats to them, but don't offer much else besides that. Fortunately for Cyberpunk, the game does make you feel. It can make you really understand the weight of the world around you and your actions. It's that pain, suffering, and despair you keep seeing on loop, and it just kind of adds up and it works really well. The main story of Cyberpunk is rather short if you piece them together, but that doesn't really cause much drama, honestly. The quality versus quantity argument is always brought up when talking about a myriad of different things. But for games, it's a tough balance between having a quality experience and engaging the player enough to keep them entertained for a long period of time. The story, while shorter than I would have wanted it to be, is filled with rather quality experiences. From those daring heists to those dizzying lows of trying to climb out of the gutters of whatever life you have left. The story offers unique choices and branching decisions within each of the quest lines that can branch into rather subjective, important consequences. Most of the choices that are offered within the main story don't offer much else besides simple dialogue choices and feeling that roleplay aspect. Being who you want to be in a role-playing game is incredibly important. It's in the name. you are role-playing a character, which is important that each conversation that you have has a multitude of different choices you can answer with, while many are not changing anything within the quest, but they do offer a better role-playing experience. I know I spilled a lot about choices in my last video, by the way, you should watch that. Plug! But choice isn't always about the multitude of different branching paths. And I'm not trying to say that branching paths are bad or aren't needed. I'm trying to say that branching paths aren't the end-all be-all in a choice-based system. It's, to me, the ability to feel the power of your character you're playing when it's important to do so.
You, don't got a lot of time left, kid.
Say what now? You'll fix me up, right, Vic?
If I could, I would, V. Believe me. But it's way beyond what I know how to do.
You're the best of the best, Vic. Why can't you help me?
Most of the main quests do offer a pretty unique or important experience for the overall story of the game, at least by itself, offering what is a total, complete experience. However, the main story of Cyberpunk isn't complete without delving into major side quests featured throughout, that branch off from the main story at different segments and continue in their own direction, that in some ways link right back to the main story at play. The story of Cyberpunk isn't just limited to the main story like other games can be, where sometimes the main story is the all-important aspect of the overall narrative. In my experience, too many games forget about that important aspect of a game's overall narrative, the side quests. Side quests can offer a range of different features, opportunities, and purposes, all depending on what type of game you're trying to make. For Cyberpunk's case, side quests can offer not just a singular function, but a multitude all within the same realm. Between simple gigs that can offer some fun, repeatable gameplay, to offer some simple rewards, to more in-depth content that can be as simple as a short quest, to more complex, multi-long quest lines about something as crazy as a talking vending machine. Then you have these major side quests, as I call them, the ones that are usually founded on a major side character that you meet throughout the game. Judy, Panam, River, and Carrie are usually what I call the four major characters, or side characters, all linking with major multi-long side quests that can offer great stories alongside fantastic characters to delve into. Each of these characters is important in their own right, in fleshing out their own major side quests and offering more of a unique perspective into the world of Night City. The difference between Panam, the nomad from outside the city, is going to be different than Carrie, who is the rocker boy living the high life. They each feel unique and believable, and in my head, they can offer a pretty great way to view a segment of the city from their perspective and understand more of how people live. They each offer around a couple hours of actual gameplay to really connect or just understand their characters. But liking a character is subjective, but understanding a character is the result of good writing. Good writing and likable characters aren't always in hand. That leads me to the man of the hour, Johnny Silverhand. Ooh boy, oh, what a fucking character Johnny Silverhand is. It feels kind of hard to start with him, but let's start with his quest. Johnny's questline is easily the most developed out of each of the other major characters. Seeing that you're kind of stuck with him and is slowly killing you, sorry for spoiling that, I guess. Throughout his long questline, we can see him slowly change or come to understand you better. Or maybe you're the one who's changing. It's not as simple as that. But either way, you get to see more of the real person beyond the Johnny Silverhand persona, becoming more attached to the person who's just been straight out a dick to you since you first met. Johnny becomes a real friend, someone willing to risk themselves for you to live whatever small amount of life you have left. Johnny, as a recurring character, continue to add life through otherwise meaningless quests or aspects of the game. Going to do some simple quest line or some simple gig, you can just start appearing and have some snarky ass fucking comments, and it's really fucking good.
Whoa, it's like symbolic.
There's always that aura of tension between both your character and Johnny, but when that barrier starts to crack, And we get to see a bit of why the way he is, through his own words.
A bit. But let's say it was my real grave. What would you write? Here lies Johnny Silverhand.
The guy who saved my life.
V, you don't know how much I want that to be true. Listen, I realize I fucked up a lot of things. Either let down or used every last person who gave me their trust. Blind, selfish bastard that I was. But I've managed one thing for now. Not to fuck this up. What we have.
Been a long, bumpy road, but we made it.
Most people I thought were my friends. They couldn't even stand to be in the same room with me. You're fucking closest to me by a long shot. There, 24/7. And yet, you don't seem to hate my living guts.
You were a real dickwipe at first.
You sort of deserved it. Remember waking up at Victor's not knowing about me? I'm seeing things, I'm scared. Then moaning at Misty's about how you didn't want to die.
Remember you whining for smokes in the middle of the night, complaining about not being able to kill me.
Never thought we'd make it this far.
And his own memories.
Tonight, I'm here to say goodbye to all of you.
Johnny, wait up. Don't do this. You could still change your mind.
Get over here, man. Fuck this band. Not your crowd, not your noise. Do your own thing.
Bastard. Gonna miss you something awful.
See you in the next life, friend.
Finishing the segment, however, without bringing up Jackie, I think would be doing a grave disservice. Jackie is who pulls you into the life. He is a great friend that ends too soon. Someone whose life is felt throughout the game, one that you could always have trusted and counted on. And the way they deal with his death during the Arasaka heist and after is honestly incredible. It doesn't really harp on it as a character trope. Oh look, your best friend is dead, it's time to be sad sort of thing, you know? I mean, of course it matters to your character, even in an open-ended role-playing game. But mostly it's done in a very thoughtful and meaningful way instead of using it like I said, where instead it becomes less meaningful. Every time Jackie is brought up, it makes sense, and it has meaning to who you are and where you came from. While his questline after his death isn't nearly as long as the other major side quests, there is at least one incredibly powerful quest that harps on this: his funeral. If you choose the correct option of where to send Jackie's body after the heist, and before you go to meet with Dex, choosing to send his body to his mother opens a rather unique quest that offers a pretty deeply emotional experience of learning how Jackie lived his life and memorializing that. It's not long, nor should it be. Instead, I see it as a way for the player to react to the death of the character's greatest friend.
I often think back to the first time me and Jack met. It feels like it happened a century ago. At another time, in another place. Jackie saved my life. And then years later in Night City, he saved it again. At a time when I thought I'd lost absolutely everything. I found my own freedom then. But it would not have happened without him. Jackie Wells, the best friend you could ask for. Loyal to a fault. Once he set his mind on something, he was ready to die to achieve it. He once told me, Chica, the one thing we can't do is be afraid of others. For his loved ones, he'd sacrifice his life without hesitation. But most importantly, Jackie loved life and had no fear. Heart on his sleeve, he didn't overthink things, he just went for it. Thought he was bulletproof. And that he'd become legend at the afterlife. And ultimately, he did what he set out to do. Shit in the shoes of some powerful people. If he's watching, bet just about now he's flipping them all the bird. When you go to war as a boy, you have a great illusion of immortality. Other people get killed, not you. Then, when you are badly wounded the first time, you lose that illusion. Rest easy, Tomb.
These major side quests, as I continue to call them, are an integral part of the entire game's narrative. The main story can give you what you need, but without experiencing these major characters and their side quests, it starts to feel like an incomplete experience comparatively. They each add something, some more so than others, but without them, the overall narrative of the game would be incredibly negatively affected. It's almost starting to feel like a trope at this point, but endings are one of the more important aspects of a game narrative. An ending to a game is the culmination of various plot points to the major themes. Without such aspects intertwined into an ending, well then it's not much of an ending at that point. Cyberpunk's endings and how it goes about them are incredibly interesting, and I still don't know how to feel about them at the end of the day. So let me explain. Your choices throughout the game don't directly influence what ending you get. Instead, it follows a different design philosophy of opening up endings as you go through more of the game. For example, Panam's ending, or the Sun ending, can only be achieved when you've completed Panam's side quest, or finishing Johnny's side quest and picking the right choices grants you the secret ending, where you take the fight to Arasaka alone, not risking any of your friends you made along the way. And I still haven't done this ending because I suck at the game, and I don't want to do it because it's hard and I'm bad. But this is where I come in and feel somewhat conflicted more than I thought I would be. Besides the quality of each of the endings, where subjectivity is king, it's always hard to make choices feel like they matter in a story that is fundamentally supposed to be linear. So making the endings an option at the end of the game instead of reflecting the choices you made throughout the game is not a unique choice, but the way they decide to make your choices matter in some sort of indirect way is fucking unique. Where you open up to more choices as you make your own decisions on how you want to progress through these quests or not, alluding to an interesting indirect relationship between your overall choices throughout the game, leading to an ending choice that in a way does reflect the choices you made while not limiting the player into a forced path. I would be lying if I could say I remember another game doing something like this exactly. The way these characters affect their own storyline, affecting your own choice at the end, especially so with Johnny Silverhand, whom you have to be incredibly more so specific with to open up with and gain each other's trust, allowing him in turn trust you to go on a suicide run when none of your friends are risked in the fight. Because no matter what ending you pick, someone is hurt or you have to do something you rather not do. People die because you asked them to help you. That feeling of guilt always sitting in the back of your head no matter what you do. Even though it is what they wanted to do, helping you, it was still you that asked them. Somebody already died on this journey of yours. Does there need to be more? I truly can't offer a better way to do the endings in this game. I just can't. Endings are always an incredibly tough aspect to get perfectly right in any game, even more so in a game that offers multiple. How can you make each one feel conclusive while also making the experience getting towards them good as well? Finally making the endings feel like it was a choice made by the player and not completely forced into. It adds that opportunity of adding more choices when you delve deeper into the game, reflecting on the choices you make throughout the narrative, choosing to either help or leave these people behind. And when you're on the final edges of that rope, you're able to lean on the help you cultivated through your action. But while the choice of endings is important, that doesn't matter if the quality of the endings isn't anything to write home about. Each one feels like a reasonable action to take, a reasonable reaction even to the most insane and depressing of them. Being placed in this kind of situation is incredibly difficult, painful, and it's not as simple as pulling yourself by your fucking bootstraps, brother. Each ending feels conclusive, which is one of the more important aspects to get right. Choice in the matter and how the world reacts to it is vital. Even though I can have problems with how the endings are portrayed, or more so how you choose them, I can't deny that I like the endings for what they are, and the style for them to go about the way the choices of each ending open up as well. I would love to see more concepts circled around how these endings open up through meaningful character interactions and understanding and growing to like or even love these characters, creating a bond that in turn you can lean on when you most need it. But that bond being called upon will hurt, more so than you might realize. The story of Cyberpunk, it's a tough topic to really talk about. It's at least from my perspective. There's so much to delve into, so much to talk about. But I can't say I disliked it throughout any point in my playthrough. The story is what carries a more so broken foundation across the finish line. Without the story, I can say handedly the game would be way worse in my head. I can see the amount of love they have put into this narrative. Characters, the world, lore, the twists, the turns, the heartbreaks, the heartwarmers, the despair, the hope, the tragedy. It's all there in a story crafted with love. The story holds it all together. No matter what will happen with the game in the future and how it was at release and how it is now, this story, these characters, this entire world they built, it's something I can't possibly ever forget about. Driving around Night City is an experience unlike many others I've felt. Words will never do this game justice in how it has crafted this immense and just fucking gorgeous looking world. Night City is by far and above the most gorgeous looking game in any I've ever experienced. The blur of the neon lights as you speed down the street with the streets of people walking past, going through their daily lives. But instead of just trying to explain it, let me just show you.
City, a day in the life. I was on my own, catching a ride with the lady. Her hair hangs down past her thighs, blue and pistol she satisfies. Leather jacket, zipped up tight. Big ones coming, look for lost and found. Iron beams, bright in Night City, where your appetite weighs you out to sunrise. She pulls my trigger, got me up alright. It's a danger pretty here in Night City. Here in Night City, got me up alright. Here in Night City.
I spent more time than I would care to admit just driving around and absorbing the atmosphere. Feels real, so real. That is one of the greatest achievements this game could have achieved. Making Night City feel like a real city. A real corporate, post-dystopian, sexualized, capitalist society that feels like it's trying to get you to buy at every corner. It is such a weird feeling to say that I would love to experience Night City, even though it's meant to show this disgusting and vile place where such systems reach their peak and people's lives are nothing more than commodities and items to be thrown away and purchased. Making the world feel real had so much more immersiveness and meaningful consequences to how you act in game. As the world feels real, other people in the world feel real, the characters feel real, and then the consequences feel real. A world in a fantasy setting isn't a living world. We know this, right? What we are playing isn't a physical place, but an imaginary one. Yet we are so easily able to elude ourselves to that notion and open to the door if it's in our own backyard. It's a fickle balance to obtain though. A world in a game has to branch itself as real, its own concepts while being obtainable from our own, meaning that we have to find some semblance of tangibility to grasp onto to achieve that bliss of immersing in this fantasy world. The ability of Cyberpunk to achieve that bliss so effectively speaks lengths. We will always know deep down that what we are experiencing isn't real. Does that actually matter? Wasn't it real for that split second where you believed you were in that driver's seat, flying down the road with the neon lights blurring past you? Then how isn't that feeling itself real? The feelings you had at that moment, that sensation is almost you could feel the air and smell the breath of the city. Then even though it is a fantasy world, wasn't that a real experience you felt? This atmosphere goes hand in hand with world building, and world building goes hand in hand with the atmosphere. It's a synonymous relationship in many different ways. If a world doesn't feel real, then the lore behind the world doesn't matter. On the other hand, if a world has fantastic world building and great lore, but then doesn't feel real, then what's the point? Cyberpunk exceeds in both with flying colors. The atmosphere itself shows a series of world building. The purpose of the atmosphere is multiple, but for me, it's two right now. One is the feeling of being in the world and the world feeling alive. Second, when the world feels alive, showing the progression and an end product of the world building that has been experienced. Think of a movie. When you jump into that movie, all the characters have years upon years of backstory you just don't know from watching. But you should gain insight as the movie progresses. We, at this moment, are seeing the product of these years of backstory or world building that we don't know about. And the duty of the story and the characters is to allow us to see that backstory through the eyes of the end product. World building is almost the same in my head. We don't gain every bit of backstory. However, we should be able to understand some aspects of that backstory through the lenses of the world we are currently experiencing. Of course, games have added benefit of being able to extend that view into the backstory much further than a film, movie, whatever the fuck you want to call it, might be able to. But that doesn't tarnish the view that if we can't gain insight into a world through the world itself, then there is a disconnect there. But Cyberpunk doesn't have that disconnect. The world itself never threw me out, no matter when or how. Other aspects caused that. But looking at it from just the perspective of the world building, the atmosphere, it does a fantastic job of making you feel like you're living in a real place. Games embody so many different creative outlets, not just with storytelling or world design or atmosphere. If a game doesn't succeed in other aspects, well, it just wouldn't be a good game on a fundamental basis. Expectations exist, yes, and some games are more purely focused on story, but Cyberpunk isn't. It expresses a fun and lively world where you can do what you want and experience a beautifully crafted world outside of the scripted experience. Gameplay has always mattered to me when I play. I mean, of course it does. However, it's never been something I've really tried to delve into, for one really simple reason. I just find narratives and how they're intertwined into a game's design or how it succeeds in a particular mechanic related to that much more interesting. Okay, so maybe it's not as simple as that, but gameplay is not a simple thing to explain or talk about as freely as a game's story or mechanics relating to that. Gameplay is incredibly vital to a game's success and overall experience. If a game's gameplay isn't well designed or just simply fun, well, then it's a chore to experience what they might have spent years trying to perfect. And with a game like this, which is trying to reach a massively broad audience, it's a AAA experience, gameplay being an inviting aspect of the game's overall fun, well, then it's important, right? Well, with this more so long-winded introduction mostly over with, you must be asking yourself, so how is the gameplay then? Or maybe you didn't, but I mean, it's an RPG. I know that's a big fucking revelation. So if you already played one, then you already understand how the game fundamentally works. You level up, you spend points on perks. That's basically the core of the game. I mean, it feels fun to play to a point. That point isn't a finite or calculable point for me, but it's that point in the game where you just kind of don't feel the challenge anymore. You have created a character spec'd out around the multiple different types of classes you can play, which are really fun and offer a good amount of replayability. It's fun to gain more and more of an understanding and skills in a gameplay style you enjoy. Yet when you get to the point where that stops and the challenge of figuring out the best way to approach a situation is gone, that's when I get to this point of feeling, well, bored, I guess, for lack of a better term. Me saying the gameplay gets boring to a point doesn't say that the entire gameplay loop is boring. To me, it's saying that the game didn't keep my attention with just the gameplay for the overall experience. Maybe you're different and you love the gameplay still, and to me, I still do. It's still a really, really enjoyable and fun experience. It's to me though, I found there to be a semblance of repetitiveness once you reach the 30 to 40 hour mark of the game, which I think is a very reasonable point to start being a little bit of a aspect of repetitiveness to the gameplay. But let me back up just a little bit. I don't hate the gameplay, far from it. I did genuinely enjoy playing it. It's just fun. It offers a lot of replayability in how you can pick and choose how you want to go about different missions and scenarios. What I'm really trying to say about the overall gameplay of Cyberpunk is just that it's good, but nothing incredible. I like it, it's fun, and it offers good replayability. But at the end of the day, it wasn't what dragged me into this game, and it wasn't what kept me going either. It's a very solid experience, but nothing more that warrants immense praise. The quality of the gameplay is important. Why else would I have just talked about it for, fuck me, unless I have a problem. Anyways, the way a game starts is incredibly vital, even more so in a role-playing game. It's in the name. You are role-playing a character, being thrust into a long and boring cutscene or tutorial section that limits the way you can function in the world they built. That isn't a good first step to take when you are playing a role-playing game that is all about getting you, the player, to immerse as your character. Many games, and especially now with RPGs, I've noticed, sort of falter on this aspect. Many games, and especially now with RPGs, I've noticed sort of falter on this aspect. Games now start with some long, drawn-out cutscene and story elements which aren't the problem themselves. But when I hit new game, do I want to be hit with a long and drawn-out cutscene, or do I want to be hit with some kind of threat or something to get me hooked in and ready to play and make choices about my character in a role-playing game? That's not to say starting out with a cutscene immediately makes your intro bad. It's more so that you are starting on more so a wrong foot than a good foot. But Cyberpunk is iffy on this when looking at it from these perspectives. You hit new game and are immediately hit into creating your character, choosing your life path, selecting perks, points into stats, picking your name, hair color, whatever else. Not really picking your name in Cyberpunk, but that's just to elaborate my point. But after that, you're thrown into a dialogue-heavy gameplay scene. It's not purely a cutscenes that Cyberpunk doesn't really have traditionally cutscenes, but each different path, the Nomad, Street Kid, and Corpo, do offer different introductions to the game, each with their own stories intertwined from the beginning, but reach around the same conceptual conclusion where the game's main story can kick off to. Now, that isn't the most bombastic opening you can have. Other games have done better with that and have hooked the player much more fluidly than Cyberpunk has. But what I believe Cyberpunk has going for it, in this case, is that it shows front and center what is vital to the game. Not the gameplay, the shooting, the driving, but the characters, the storytelling, the narrative, which in my eyes does it better justice than if it somehow started with a heist or something more bombastic to get you hooked in. By the end of this intro, you should be hooked on the game. And I can say I was. Is it a perfect intro? Fuck no, far from it. They could have done much more to make each of the different life paths more unique from each other and give the player a more faster input into the gameplay and making choices to evolve themselves as their character. Yeah, I know this is incredibly fucking nitpicky, and the intro does a better job than many other games do in recent memory, but more so, I would have liked more to have been done around each of these life paths and allow us to feel like they were more substantial choices than a simple 15-minute introduction and additions of new dialogue choices throughout. The game is focused more on its story than its gameplay, but its gameplay is what hooks the player in first. The story is the big hook, but the gameplay is the fast one. Now, this part is not one I talk with a whole lot of excitement. Gaming is a really tough creative medium, and mistakes will always happen. Even though I've played this game and I could continue to do so for hours longer, this video is not meant to be a overall praise of the game. I am not blind to the problems that Cyberpunk has with its launch and the problems that still persist today. From as simple as the visual glitches to the state it released at launch, the most disappointing to me of the lack of content that was promised in the final game. I'm not going to beat a dead horse on this issue. Almost everyone who has seen Cyberpunk, has played Cyberpunk, who even fucking knows Cyberpunk, has some idea about the state of the game that the game was in at launch. From the game-breaking bugs, to the massive performance issues on consoles, to the multitude of visual glitches, etc, etc. You get the point. I am not going to defend the game it was at launch. I played the game the day it came out. I know what it was like then. Fortunately, I was on PC, so I didn't experience the unforgivable state that the game was in for consoles. My own experience was better than others, but I will be the first to say this game shouldn't have been released in the state it was in, I mean, of course, and on previous gen consoles. At least, of course, the state it was in, or honestly, at all. The previous gen consoles were a production and development nightmare for the dev team throughout the development of this game. That is not an out for them. If they wanted to release this game on previous gen consoles, they should have made it so that it was at least fucking playable. Not to the point where Sony had to give refunds, which they never do. We're talking about fucking Sony here. Like, bro, it's fucking Sony, bro. They don't give you refunds ever. But I'm not gonna say that I had any idea what truly went down behind the scenes. All I can say in the kindest of words is that something went wrong and time wasn't given to allow it to shine as it should have. Yet, it's been nearly 2 years since the release, with over 6 major patches released at this point. The launch is far behind us at this point. It's one that we should remember, of course, and one that CDPR has to learn from. It matters, but what matters more for this game is the state it is currently in. For the people who want to play this game now, how is it? Or maybe you didn't ask that. Well, I will say going from the launch patch to this one was pretty interesting. Not much has drastically changed between the launch and the current one. Do not expect major additions similar to changes to police AI or something along those lines. Most changes are either balance related, add more weapons, cars, side content to the overall experience. But what has changed most is the quality of the already given experience, meaning that most bugs seem to have been fixed. I didn't find anything that caused a quest to break or anything that broke the game. I had a singular crash in well over 50 hours with some minor mods. At least on PC, it's a pretty smooth experience in terms of playability. What is still a problem is visual glitches. I could show you so many different types of examples of something not popping in right, objects clipping into each other, me being fucking thrown into the fucking sky, and weird visual glitches, flashes. I don't even know what they were. But note on those weird flashes I was talking about, I figured out the reason why those appeared and was able to fix it with an update to the DLSS file and using a mod to forcibly remove bloom. Those two things removed these weird flashes that seemed to appear due to me using DLSS. Because when I stopped using DLSS, the problem completely disappeared. But back on track, visual glitches can be very annoying when they appear, But for me, I don't find that they completely ruin the experience. They can take me out of being immersed, but they're not as game breaking as a bug that literally stops you from progressing a quest. It's something that should be fixed, but it's not in a high state of emergency compared to the other issues that may or may not appear. Overall, looking at the experience from a purely technical standpoint, the game has clearly gotten attention to the glitches and bugs that were at launch. Most game-breaking bugs that were apparent seem to have been dealt with over the last 2 years. So the game has pretty much improved over the last 2 years in pretty good ways. I won't be denying that they're doing good work that is improving the experience. However, it's not what we were promised. I know this is a pretty hot button topic. I'm not trying to be objective in how I feel, but what we were promised in the multiple years this game was being made and what we were given just aren't the same. There is a difference between being promised something and then not delivering that due to design changes or just flat out development time. Changing mechanic shown in early development due to a technical limitation or just simply because it's not fun is perfectly normal and in my opinion good for a game's development. But when we aren't given something, that be a mechanic, a story element, whatever that may be, due to just flat out development time limitations is where I have a problem. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should work on this game forever or just games in general. There has to be a time and place where it's the magical good enough. Yet it clearly wasn't here. Looking through some articles, it seems like from the development and the messaging given out after launch, there just wasn't enough time given. Management didn't allow this game to be developed under well-meaning conditions in a time frame that allows it to succeed. Multiple devs have come out to say that during the development of Cyberpunk, that they knew that it wouldn't be ready when it was supposed to be released. That right there is a major problem. Ready when it's done was a prominent marketing tag for Cyberpunk. Well, why wasn't it? Let's move on to something that's a bit more positive and what really sparked this video in the first place, and the outpouring of new players and support for Cyberpunk in the last couple, well now it's been few months. It's Edgerunners. I just love this show so much. So much of this show is just so perfectly done, it's hard to point out problems. I guess the only one I could is pacing. It feels like it goes blistering fast in the beginning. I just wish there was just more time in episodes for them to build up and land the ending. But either way, what they're able to do in a rather short amount of episodes was really fucking good. I love it. Feels like a sister piece to this game, as it harbors pretty similar topics and themes as the original game did, which is just cyberpunk in general. Much like The Witcher show, the power of investing in these multimedia ventures is shown to be a pretty fucking powerful tool. In both cases of Witcher and now Cyberpunk, the number of people playing and talking about the game skyrocketed after the release of both respective shows. Edgerunners has brought in much wanted attention to Cyberpunk on the heels of a major new patch that is directly tied to the anime. Edgerunners feels like a love letter to the world of Cyberpunk. The amount of attention to detail on the ties to the game is just on a different level. But the reason I really wanted to bring up Edgerunners is to show just how good multimedia can be. The game crossing over with an anime in just a really good way. I mean, the only reason I'm making this video today is because of the anime and the critical praise it got across the board. It really did rekindle my love for this game and world through a completely different medium that sparked a new love for itself as well. CDPR are really good at utilizing these crossovers of different creative mediums to express more about their worlds and characters than I think any other game publisher or studio has come to. Of course, games crossing over to movies, shows, anime, whatever, isn't a new concept. You go back to the 90s and find shows that utilize the same sort of concepts I'm talking about. It's just that, well, they were fucking shit 99% of the time. Anyone fucking remember those fucking Mario movies, dude? Holy fuck. At least most of them. There were some good ones. I'm just trying not to get fucking flamed. But most of them were pretty low budget cast grabbing projects that had no love for the original material and were only there to cash on a very popular video game franchise. Resident Evil is a really good example of this. So how many movies or TV shows can you remember that shares the Resident Evil name? Well, I can remember a few, but naming a good one is almost fucking impossible. But I wish it could be as simple as explaining it away as cash grabs. But it shows more so how hard it is to translate an interactive experience to one that is non-interactive. How do you give the same feelings and concepts that created the game to a medium that we watch instead of play? Fuck me if CDPR hasn't figured it out somehow. Well, excluding the more recent news about the Witcher show and the overall direction it's going. But Edgerunners instead shows a beautiful translation of a video game to another creative medium. Something that I would love to see done more. And in the style of Edgerunners. Not in the style of copying and pasting the same story in just different ways like The Witcher. Show me something fresh and original within the same world. The same style. I think that's what really sold Edgerunners and has given it so much success. Besides how quality of a show it is, it's because it feels fresh from outside the game. You don't have to play the game or know the world or the lore to really just enjoy it. Long after the game's release, and showing a completely different cast of characters that we can get attached to instead of just forcing the same story. Edgerunners is just truly a masterclass in taking a brilliant game world and translating that into its own thing, while keeping homage to the original. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest, this part isn't scripted in the least. This is off the cuff, pure fucking rambling, because I am too lazy to script this part after I've scripted this entire video. So I wanna talk about the music for a bit. The music in this game is really well done. From just the original soundtrack to the background music to just the audio sounds to the bringing in of the music, the licensing. I can't make you listen to that because I don't want to get fucked by copyright. But what I wanted to bring light to was the original soundtrack and the original songs they made. They're just really fucking good. This entire video has been nothing but these songs. I'm not kidding, this is just how good the music is. It's just so fucking good. You can tell this is non-scripted because I still don't know what to say. Like, I'm not trying to talk about how good the details are or how good the fellatio is. That's definitely a musical term, don't look it up. But I mean, I just listen to music and I think the beep boops sound good. That's about it. The beep boops are really good in this game and I like it so much that I still listen to these songs even after I'm done playing the game, which for me is the biggest praise I could give to a game soundtrack. It's just that I listen to it all the fucking time when I listen to music, which isn't all the fucking time, but when I listen to music, I listen to it all the fucking time. So, I mean, that's how it's like at 5% of the time. That's a lot of time that I listen to yeah, it's really good. Yeah. There is just a lot to say about Cyberpunk. But the reason why I wanted to bring this out is because of the more recent news of the new DLC coming out next year, Phantom Liberty, and the rather huge news of a sequel being produced. A new game is a great restart point for CDPR and Cyberpunk in general. The technical aspects of this game are a complete mess, and moving on to something that takes lessons from what was screwed up and what was greatly done is a tough but right choice. They should continue to make this game the best it can be considering the circumstances, but it's time to start anew and learn. I love Cyberpunk. It has so much incredible potential. I can just see it, even through the cracked lenses of Cyberpunk 2077. The story and the characters are all done fucking brilliantly. The world building is so fucking immersive. There is so much done right. But if we want the next game to take what was good about this game and improve on the things that wasn't good, then we have to be critical. Just saying that a game is good or it is bad isn't helpful in truly improving it. I love Cyberpunk, but it's somewhat of a hard game to praise. I mean, I could for hours. I could just talk about this game's story for on and on and on. But it has such major problems that it's just hard to not talk about it. I want Cyberpunk to be the best game it can be. I can see it. It's a game that I dream about. It's just there. But the game that I want is still just a dream. Realized slowly, but hopefully more as lessons are learned and mistakes are rectified. But even with all that, at the end of the day, Cyberpunk is truly, truly a unique experience.
Well, Night City. Good night and good luck.